I was halfway through folding the laundry when I heard them again. My daughter Rachel thought I couldn't hear much anymore. She always spoke like I was a broken radio, one ear working, the other tuned to static, but I heard her voice just fine through the kitchen wall, clear as the chirp of the dryer buzzer. "She keeps forgetting what day it is," she whispered to her husband Tom. "I think it's getting worse. Maybe it's time we talk about options." Options. It's always options when they want to make decisions for you without asking. When they think they're doing you a favor while stripping you of the right to decide your own future. I kept folding. Socks, hand towels, Mark's old t-shirt. I still wore to bed. My hands didn't shake, not yet. My mind wasn't foggy. Not today, anyway. But they had made up their minds. That evening Rachel brought me tea like she always did when she was trying to soften a blow. Chamomile. My least favorite. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and gave me a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. "Mom, you've been so tired lately. Are you sure you're feeling okay?" I looked at her long and steady. "I'm tired of a lot of things, Rachel. Not just laundry." She chuckled like I'd made a joke. Tom hovered behind her, sipping from a glass, like he wanted to be part of the conversation but couldn't quite figure out how to step in without revealing too much. Then she said it. "Mom, we've been talking and we think it might be time for you to consider assisted living. You know, somewhere safe and structured." There it was, not even a full week after my 74th birthday. I didn't react. I let the words float in the air like steam from the tea I didn't ask for. Rachel pushed a pamphlet across the table. I didn't look at it. "I'm not going anywhere," I said plainly. She sighed. "It's not about pushing you out. It's about what's best for you. You've been forgetting things. You've left the stove on, remember? That happened once, 3 months ago." Tom stepped forward. "Margaret, we just want to help." I turned my gaze on him. "Is that why you've been eyeing my house like a real estate agent? At an open house?" That silenced them both. Because that's what this was about. Not the stove, not the days of the week. The house. My house. The one Mark and I bought together when Rachel was still in pigtails and jelly shoes. The one I kept up, painted, repaired, and protected for over 40 years. And now, like clockwork, they wanted to start erasing me from it. I stood up slowly, my knees stiff from too many winters, but my back still straight. "You can leave your pamphlet on the counter," I said. "But don't mistake silence for weakness. I hear everything in this house, even what you whisper." And I walked to my room, the one that still smelled faintly of rosewater and cedar. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about how easily people forget that elders don't lose wisdom with age. Just patience. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to Rachel and Tom in the kitchen after I went to bed. "She's being stubborn," Rachel whispered. "She's being old," Tom replied. "She doesn't even realize we're trying to protect her from herself." Rachel's voice dropped even lower. "Maybe we should just talk to the lawyer about it. If we can prove she's mentally declining, we could." I didn't hear the rest. The dishwasher started humming and drowned it out. But I knew enough. They were planning something. And they thought the word Senile could be used like a key to unlock everything I had worked for. I got up before sunrise. I didn't cook breakfast like I usually did. I didn't take my morning walk to the mailbox. I didn't even put on my cardigan. I went straight to the bottom drawer of Mark's old desk and pulled out a file I hadn't touched in years. Inside was the name of a woman I hadn't spoken to since his funeral. Carolyn Briggs. She had been our lawyer for the house, for the will, for the little legal things we never thought would matter until life proved us wrong. I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret?" she said, surprised. "I need your help," I told her. "They're calling me senile." Carolyn was quiet for a beat. Do you want to meet this afternoon? Yes, I'll be ready. I hung up and felt something stir in my chest. Not fear, not anger. Something calmer. Like a current in the ocean just beginning to swell. When I came out for breakfast, Rachel was already gone. Tom was on his laptop in the living room. He looked up when I walked by, clearly surprised. You're up early. I have an appointment, I said. Oh? With who? I didn't answer. I just smiled and walked out the front door with my purse and a folder tucked under my arm. Let them wonder. Let them try to piece together the plan they didn't get to control. Carolyn hadn't changed much. Her hair was grayer now, and her office smelled like lavender and printer ink. But her eyes were still sharp, and her handshake was still firm. I knew this day might come. She said after I explained everything, "You're not the first parent to be called unstable when assets are at stake." Can they do it? I asked. Can they have me declared unfit? Only if you truly are. Which you're not. She pulled out a document. This is a revocable living trust. It places all your assets, including the house, under your sole control while protecting them from being taken or signed away under pressure. I nodded slowly. What else can I do? We'll get a cognitive evaluation, voluntary, clean and legal. That shuts down any claim of mental incompetence before it starts. And if they try to escalate, we'll let the law speak for you. I stared at the form. My fingers hovered over the pen. Carolyn, I said quietly, I didn't think I'd need to protect myself from my own daughter. Her voice softened. That's how these stories often begin. I signed it. The trust, the power of attorney revocation, the living will updates, all of it. Not because I wanted to start a war, but because I refused to be erased. Politely. When I got home, Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table. Tom was gone. She looked up from her phone. Where were you? I had a meeting, I said. She raised an eyebrow. With who? My lawyer. That stopped her. I placed the folder on the table and gave her a look that made her sit up straighter. No more whispering behind my back, I said. If you want to talk about my mind, talk to my lawyer. She knows it's intact. Rachel flushed. Mom, that's not what we... It's exactly what you were doing. You called me senile. You were making plans. Now you can talk to someone who speaks my language. She looked at the folder like it might explode. Why are you being like this? Because I'm done being quiet. That night, I made myself dinner. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Just like I used to make for Rachel when she was little. She didn't eat with me. She stayed in her room, but I didn't mind. Because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just surviving in my own house. I was standing my ground, and this was only the beginning. The next morning, I found Rachel standing at the counter, pouring herself coffee like it wasn't the most awkward moment in the world. The folder I'd left on the table the night before was gone. Not misplaced. Taken. She'd gone through it. I didn't need to ask. She turned to me with a smile so brittle it could snap in the wind. Mom, I think you misunderstood what Tom and I were trying to say. I raised an eyebrow. Did I? Or did I just finally start listening to the part you weren't saying out loud? She stiffened. Mom, she said again, tone overly patient. We weren't trying to take anything from you. We were worried. Were you worried when you started talking to lawyers behind my back? Or when you whispered about options like I was a worn-out suitcase no one wanted to carry anymore? Her smile fell. I found the trust documents. She admitted. You really didn't think to discuss this with me. I tilted my head. Did you think to discuss moving me into assisted living, or taking control of my money? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked like a child caught stealing a cookie, but too proud to admit she was wrong. Things got complicated, she muttered. No, I said firmly. You made them complicated. Rachel sighed and set the mug down with too much force. I don't want to fight with you. Good, I said, turning to leave the kitchen. Because I've already won the first round. That afternoon, I had a doctor's appointment with Dr. Willis, the same man who'd been my physician for over 20 years. I'd already told him about the upcoming cognitive evaluation, and he welcomed me in with a smile and a clipboard. We spent 2 hours going over everything: memory, orientation, problem solving. I answered every question without hesitation. I've had patients 10 years younger who don't test this well, he said, half joking, as he jotted down the results. That's because they haven't had to keep track of 2 grown children who can't decide whether they love me or want my house, I said with a smile. He chuckled but then grew serious. Margaret, are you feeling safe at home? It was the first time someone had asked me that without assuming I was just fragile. He asked it like I was a person, not a problem. I'm not unsafe, I said, but I'm not respected, and that's its own kind of danger. He nodded. Well, let me be clear. These results show full cognitive function, sharp memory, logical thinking, emotional control. There's no basis for any claim of decline. Could you put that in writing? He raised an eyebrow. For the record, no, I said. For the courtroom, back home, Tom was waiting for me. He stood outside the garage holding a manila envelope. His face was too calm. I'd learned long ago that calmness like that wasn't peace. It was strategy. I thought we could talk, he said, waving the envelope slightly. You've got the lawyer, now we've got one too. Of course they did. I stepped closer. Are you serving me papers? No, he said. Not yet. That yet was a warning shot. He cleared his throat. Rachel and I just want to make sure you're being taken care of. There's no shame in needing help, Margaret. But we can't ignore the concerns. Concerns like what? That I might decide not to give you this house. His mouth twitched. You know this place is too much for you, he said. You're alone now. It's only natural to consider the next steps. This house isn't too much for me, I replied. What's too much is being surrounded by people who treat me like I'm a confused old woman, instead of the person who made this house a home for decades. His voice dropped. You're being emotional. I stepped forward. You're damn right. I'm emotional. I raised Rachel while working night shifts. I paid off this mortgage when Mark got sick. I fixed that leaky roof with my own hands. And now you're telling me I'm the one who's irrational for wanting to stay in my own home. He glanced around nervously, like he didn't want the neighbors to hear. But let them. I'm not the problem, Tom, I said. You are. And the next time you want to suggest otherwise, you can talk to Carolyn. I turned and went inside without another word. Later that night, I got an email from Carolyn. She'd already filed the paperwork with the county. The house was now fully secured in the trust. Any legal challenge would have to go through court, and with my clean bill of cognitive health, they didn't stand a chance. I sat at my desk, rereading the documents. For the first time in weeks, my hands weren't trembling. The next morning, Rachel surprised me. She was in the living room with 2 suitcases. I think it's better if we stay somewhere else for a while, she said. I looked at her. She wasn't angry, just tired. Not because I hate you, she added quickly. Because we clearly don't see eye to eye anymore. And I don't want to live in a house where I feel like the enemy. I nodded. Then maybe don't act like one. She didn't reply. Tom came in behind her, hauling a duffel bag and muttering something under his breath. Grace, my granddaughter, followed them, clutching her tablet and looking back at me. Grandma, she said softly. Are you okay? I smiled and bent down. Better than ever, baby. I just remembered who I am. She wrapped her little arms around me, and that hug reminded me exactly why I'd stood my ground. When the door shut behind them, I didn't feel relief. I felt grief. This wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want war. I didn't want distance. I wanted respect, and I'd had to fight tooth and nail just to get it. I called Carolyn later that day. "Is it done?" I asked. "It's done," she said. "They can't touch the house. The bank accounts are separated. And you're protected legally and medically. What happens now? That's up to them. But you've already won." That night, I walked room to room, checking each lock, turning off each light. In the hallway, I stopped by the family portrait we took at Grace's second birthday. We all looked happy then. Or at least we were pretending well enough for the camera. I whispered to the picture, "I hope one day you understand why I had to draw the line." And then I went to bed. My mind was clear. My house was mine. And no one, not even my own daughter, would silence me again. The morning after Rachel and Tom moved out, the house was silent. No slamming doors, no whispered insults, no heavy sighs over morning coffee as if my very presence in my own kitchen was an inconvenience. It should have felt like peace. Instead, it felt like pause, like the air had gone still before a storm. By noon, I got confirmation of the thunder. Carolyn forwarded me an email from a lawyer named Marcus Reinhardt. He represented Tom and Rachel. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding mental capacity and home ownership." I didn't even flinch. I'd been expecting this. The contents of the email were predictable. Concerned family members, unpredictable behavior, increasing forgetfulness, and questionable financial decisions. They claimed I was acting erratically. I closed the email and poured myself some tea. Then I called Carolyn. "Let's go ahead and file the response." She didn't even hesitate. I already drafted it. The next week was full of paperwork. Carolyn arranged for my official cognitive assessment to be submitted to the court. Willis provided his full report dates, scores, professional observations, all stating I was mentally sound and fully capable of managing my affair. We also filed a declaration affirming the legal establishment of the living trust and a motion to dismiss any future claims without substantiated medical proof. It was a preemptive strike, but a quiet one. No fireworks, just signatures and seal. Rachel and Tom didn't know it yet, but they had brought knives to a gunfight. A few days later, I received a call, not from Carolyn, not from the court, but from Grace. "Grandma," she said softly, "Mommy and Daddy are fighting. A lot." My heart sank. "I miss you," she added. "I miss you too, honey," I said. "Are you okay?" "I think so. Mommy said you're mad at us." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not mad, baby. I'm just making sure I'm treated fairly." There was silence on the other end. Then she whispered, "Did you really forget your birthday?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart, I didn't forget." She exhaled in that small, honest way only children can. "I didn't think you did." 2 nights later, Rachel showed up at my door. No warning, no call, just her in a yellow manila envelope, standing on my front porch, like it wasn't the same house she tried to take from me. I opened the door but didn't move aside. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice tight. I thought for a moment, then nodded. Briefly. She sat on the couch. I didn't offer tea this time. She handed me the envelope. "This is a formal notice," she said. "We've filed a petition for a competency hearing." There it was. The full assault. "You're really going through with this?" I asked. She shrugged. "You've frozen us out of everything. We have no choice." "No, Rachel. You had choices. You just didn't like the one I made. She rubbed her temples. I didn't come here to argue. Then why did you come? She looked up at me. Her face, usually composed and steely, now carried something unfamiliar. Regret. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I hoped you'd say this has all gone too far and we can talk like a family again. I sat down across from her. I tried that. You didn't listen. You called me senile and started plotting around me. And now you want to talk? I was scared, she said quietly. Of what? Of you slipping away, she said. Of losing control. And so you decided to control me first. She didn't reply. I stood. Rachel, I love you, but I won't live under suspicion. If you go forward with this hearing, we're done, not just legally, personally. Her lips parted like she wanted to object, but she didn't. She left without another word, and for the first time I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just resolve. The court date came 2 weeks later. It wasn't a dramatic trial. No jury, no gavel bangs, just a small courtroom with a judge, 2 lawyers, and the faint smell of old furniture polish. Rachel and Tom sat on one side. Carolyn and I sat on the other. I wore Mark's favorite blue cardigan and the necklace Grace had made for me 2 Christmases ago. I looked like a grandmother, but I sat like a woman who remembered everything. Rachel's lawyer argued uncharacteristic behavior, emotional withdrawal, and sudden changes in financial management. He said Rachel and Tom were only acting out of love and concern. Carolyn stood with quiet power. She laid out the documents. Cognitive assessment from a board-certified doctor. Voluntary legal trust, properly witnessed. Power of attorney revocation with dated signatures. A log of interactions showing no erratic behavior, just boundaries being enforced. Then Carolyn handed the judge a recording. My eyes widened. I hadn't known about this. Rachel's voice came through clearly on the courtroom speakers. She doesn't even realize we're trying to protect her from herself. Maybe we should just talk to the lawyer about it. If we can prove she's mentally declining. The judge held up a hand to stop the playback. He looked at Rachel, then at me. Mrs. Hartley, do you feel you are of sound mind? I do, I said calmly. Do you feel threatened? I feel betrayed. The judge nodded. Based on the medical evaluations, legal documentation, and audio evidence, I find no grounds to question Mrs. Hartley's competence or revoke her autonomy. He banged the gavel once. Case closed. Rachel didn't look at me as they left. Back home, I stood on the porch and watched the sunset bleed across the sky like it was washing everything clean. I wasn't happy, but I was whole, and no one had taken anything from me this time. That night, Grace called again. Did you win? She asked. I didn't win, sweetheart, I said. I just didn't lose. I told Mommy you're not crazy. I laughed through a tear. Thank you, baby. That means more than any court ruling. She paused. Can I come stay with you sometime? Anytime you want, I said. And I meant it. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. You didn't just save your house, you saved your dignity. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew they were right. 3 days after the hearing, the silence was louder than ever. No calls, no visit, no more knocks on the door pretending to be concerned about my well-being. Rachel and Tom had gone cold, frozen. Really. And it wasn't the kind of silence that heals. It was the kind that punishes. I would have been fine with the distance if it hadn't affected Grace. She didn't call like she used to. No video chats. No after-school ramblings about her science projects. And I knew that Rachel was using her as leverage. My granddaughter, the one person in that family who saw me clearly, was being kept away like a bargaining chip. It hurt more than I'd anticipated, and that hurt turned quickly into something else. Resolve. I'd spent too much of my life folding myself smaller for the comfort of others. First for my late husband, Mark, whose kindness sometimes came with condition. Then for Rachel, whose love had always depended on my silence. And now, when I had finally dared to speak and protect myself, they were trying to ice me out of the only warmth I had left, Grace. So I turned up the heat, not out of revenge, out of necessity. That Friday, I called my bank manager, Teresa, a woman I'd known since she was a teller fresh out of college. We had tea together once a month. She always called me Ms. Margaret, even though I told her for years she could stop. Miss Margaret, she said when she picked up. You sound like a woman on a mission. I am, I replied. Can we meet in person? I'd like to make some changes. Absolutely. I'll clear a room. At the branch, I signed paperwork that shifted all my accounts, checking, savings, CD, and even my small investment portfolio under the Hartley Living Trust. I updated my list of beneficiaries. I removed Rachel. I added Grace. But not just as an heir. I created a small account, seeded with $5,000, in her name. In the letter attached to the account, I wrote, for books, shoes, art supplies, and anything else that makes your spirit feel seen. Love, Grandma. Teresa handed me copies of everything. Anything else I can do? She asked. I smiled. Yes, I'd like to close the joint account I opened with Rachel 5 years ago. She blinked. Didn't know you two still had one. Neither did I, until I saw what was missing from it. Next, I visited the community center. There was a new youth outreach program looking for volunteers. I'd heard from Mrs. Tennyson down the street that they were desperate for help. Someone who could read to kids, organize snack time, and just show up. I signed up for 3 afternoons a week. I'm not just here to kill time, I told the coordinator. I'm here because I know what being ignored feels like, and I won't let the next generation feel that way too. By the following Monday, the air had shifted. Tom sent me an email, cold and short. We're surprised to hear Grace's name has been added to your trust. Without discussion, we're not comfortable with her being involved in legal matters she's too young to understand. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Carolyn, who responded simply, your concern has been noted. No action necessary. That same week, I received an invitation in the mail. Not from Rachel, not from Tom, from Grace. A handmade card, glitter glue and all. Grandma, we're having a school play. I'm a sunflower. I hope you can come. Taped inside was the ticket. I held that card to my chest like it was a golden letter from heaven. Then I made a plan. I showed up early on the day of the play, found my seat in the 3rd row. Middle, perfect view. I even brought a small bouquet of yellow daisies. When Rachel walked in and saw me, her expression dropped. Tom froze. They had no idea I'd been invited. Grace, on the other hand, lit up like the stage lights. Grandma, she waved, hopping in place. Rachel leaned toward her, whispering something I couldn't hear. Grace frowned, then shook her head. She didn't move seats. She didn't look away. She beamed. I waved back and mouthed, I'm proud of you. She nodded like she already knew. The play was adorable. Kids forgetting lines, teachers whispering from behind the curtains, paper leaves falling out of place. But Grace stood straight, spoke clearly, and even added a little twirl during her sunflower moment. I clapped harder than anyone. Afterward, while Rachel tried to herd her away quickly, Grace dashed toward me and threw her arms around my waist. I knew you'd come. I wouldn't miss it, I said, holding her tight. Rachel approached slowly. You're not supposed to be here, she muttered. She invited me, I replied. She has her own voice now. I won't silence it just because you're uncomfortable. Tom stepped in. This is crossing a line. No, I said firmly. Taking my money behind my back crossed the line. Calling me senile crossed the line. This is family. You don't get to rewrite the rules just because I stopped playing by yours. They didn't answer, just turned and walked away. Grace looked back once, gave me a little wink, and disappeared into the crowd. I walked home alone, but I didn't feel alone, not anymore. That night, I lit a candle for Mark. It had been almost 9 years since he passed. I wish you were here, I whispered. Or maybe I wish you'd seen all this coming. In my heart, I knew he had. He'd warned me once that Rachel had his stubborn streak, but none of his softness. Still, I wondered what he'd say now. Would he have told me to forgive? Would he have stood by me? Either way, I knew what I had to do. The next day, I called my attorney. I want to revise the trust, I told Carolyn. If something happens to me, Grace gets the house, not Rachel, not Tom, just Grace. She's still a minor, Carolyn said. Are you sure? I'll appoint a financial guardian. Someone neutral. But that little girl? She's the only one who's never lied to me. That means something. I'll draw it up, Carolyn replied. They froze me out. So I turned up the heat with every legal document, every hug from Grace, every step into that community center. I reclaimed the fire they tried to smother. I may be a grandmother, but I'm not someone you silence and toss aside. And I was just getting started. They say regret always shows up late. In Rachel's case, it arrived one Saturday morning, just after the mailman pulled away from her driveway. I knew because she called me, something she hadn't done in over a month. Her voice on the line was uneven, shaky but still trying to sound controlled. I didn't answer right away. I let her speak first. Mom, I got something from your lawyer today. She didn't say hello, no small talk, just that. What did it say? I asked calmly, even though I already knew. She paused. That the house is officially being placed in trust for Grace. Not that you've amended your estate plan. That's correct. You didn't tell me, she snapped. I took a breath. Rachel, we haven't exactly been having heart-to-hearts lately. But this is permanent. Yes, that's the point. It had taken 2 weeks for Carolyn to draft and file the amendment. In it, Grace was listed as the primary beneficiary of the house, to inherit it when she turned 25. Until then, a neutral trustee, Carolyn's firm, would manage the property. Rachel and Tom had no access, no rights, and no legal say. It was airtight, and it was necessary, because after what they'd done, accusing me of being senile, trying to declare me incompetent, and draining my account behind my back, there was no going back to normal. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure and control over what was mine. Rachel didn't handle it well. That same evening, she showed up unannounced again. She stood on my porch like a lawyer preparing a closing argument. I want to apologize, she said the moment I opened the door. I stepped aside. Come in. She didn't sit, just hovered near the entryway, her eyes flicking from photo frame to photo frame like she was scanning for memories she could use as leverage. I was wrong, she finally said. We both were. Tom and I, we panicked. We thought you were slipping, and we made decisions out of fear. Fear doesn't drain accounts, I replied. Fear doesn't call lawyers behind someone's back. She sighed. I know, but you're still my mother. We can fix this. I looked at her for a long moment. You're sorry because you lost control, not because you hurt me. That's not true, isn't it? Because the moment I made Grace the heir, instead of you, that's when you decided to call. Rachel didn't respond. Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked past her, picked up the framed picture of me and Grace at the school play, and held it up. She's the only one in this house who sees me for who I am, not what I can give, not what I owe, just me. Mom, I set the photo down. I forgave you a long time ago, Rachel. But that doesn't mean I trust you. Are you cutting me out of your life? No, I said softly. I'm drawing a line, and whether you cross it again is up to you. She left without another word. But her silence wasn't victorious anymore. It was hollow. Tom's apology came a week later, in the form of a 2-line email. I understand your decision. I wish things had gone differently. We'll stay away unless invited. It was the first time he'd shown any respect. And frankly, the last I expected to hear from him. Life, for a while, returned to a quiet rhythm. I volunteered. I made banana bread for the neighbors. I went to Grace's swim meets and watched her practice her butterfly stroke with fierce determination. She was growing into herself, strong, curious, kind. Sometimes she'd stay the weekend. We'd do puzzles, cook dinner together, and sit on the porch talking about the stars. I don't want to be like Mom when I grow up, she said one night, hugging her knees on the swing. You'll be your own person, I said. And you'll be better, because you've seen the difference. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad you didn't let them win. So am I whispered. One Tuesday, I ran into Mrs. Redmond at the market. She'd known Rachel since she was a teenager. I heard about the court stuff, she said quietly, leaning close. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I smiled. Thank you. But I needed to. She raised her eyebrows. You don't look bitter. I'm not, I said. I'm just clear, and I was. I no longer walked on eggshells around my own daughter. I no longer tiptoed around discomfort just to keep the peace. I had spent my life avoiding confrontation, but all that had gotten me was a bruised heart and an empty birthday chair. Never again. One evening, a letter arrived from Grace. Not a text, not an email. A real letter. Grandma, when I grow up I want to be like you, not afraid to say no, not afraid to do what's right. I know Mom doesn't understand, but I do. You're brave. I held the paper for a long time. That was my legacy. Not money, not the house, but strength. Later that month, I hosted a small dinner with friends from the community center. We laughed, shared stories, and one of the younger volunteers, Jade, a bright 22-year-old, asked, How did you get so fearless, Ms. Margaret? I took a sip of tea and said, I wasn't always, but life taught me the hard way. That silence doesn't protect you, it just delays the damage. They nodded, and in that moment, I realized I'd become something I never expected in my retirement. A quiet kind of leader, not loud, not flashy, just unmovable. Rachel eventually called again. Not to argue, not to demand, just to talk. I know I messed up, she said. I just don't know how to fix it. You start by not trying to fix it, I replied. You let people heal on their own time. And Grace, she's already healing, I said. Because she saw what standing up looks like. Rachel was quiet. Then, I hope one day she forgives me. She will, I said. If you give her reason to. I wasn't interested in punishing them anymore. I had no room left for vengeance, only peace. But peace requires boundaries, and I was done apologizing for setting mine. I ended that day walking the same hallway where Rachel once called me a burden. Now it echoed with laughter from Grace's weekend visit, from the neighbors who dropped off cookies, from a life slowly being rebuilt on my terms. They had tried to silence me with a label, Senile. But the truth, they just couldn't handle that I'd found my voice. And this time, I wasn't giving it back. It was a quiet Wednesday morning, when I sat down at the kitchen table and picked up my old fountain pen, the kind Mark used to give me for my birthday every year. Gold nib, always with blue ink. I hadn't used it in a while. But today felt like the right day to write something permanent. Not a will, not a contract, just a letter. The kind that leaves no room for doubt. Over the past few weeks, Rachel had made small attempts to mend things. A short phone call, a photo of Grace at her school spelling bee, an offer to stop by with groceries. She never stayed long. She never brought Tom. And every time she came, she'd glance around the house like she was still trying to find a way back in. Not just physically but emotionally. But the thing about breaking something is, even when it's fixed, you can always see the cracks, and while I appreciated the effort, I hadn't yet decided if she truly understood why the damage had been done in the first place. That's what the letter was for. I began with the truth. Rachel, you once told me that I was slipping, that I wasn't the same anymore. You said it softly, with pity in your voice. But it still stung worse than a slap. What you didn't know is that I had seen the change in you long before you claimed to see one in me. I paused. The ink swirled slowly on the page. I continued. It wasn't memory that I lost. It was trust. You mistook my silence for weakness. You saw my stillness as fragility, but I was quiet because I was watching. And I stayed still because I was listening to the way Tom dismissed me, to the way you let him, to the way you whispered in Grace's ear when she got too close to me, to the way my birthday passed like a Tuesday, to the way my money vanished like smoke. I took a breath. It still hurt, but I wrote more. You called me senile to shut me up. You used that word to strip me of my voice, to cast doubt on my judgment, to get ahead of the shame you felt deep down. But that word didn't silence me. It freed me. It wasn't a bitter letter. It was a boundary. Rachel, I love you. I will always love you. But love without respect is theater, and I won't be your stage anymore. I closed the letter with a note about Grace. She is the best part of both of us. I hope you remember that the next time you try to use her as a weapon. I sealed the envelope, hand-addressed it, and drove to the post office myself. I didn't trust this one to get lost in the house mail pile. That weekend I hosted a small gathering at the community center. It was a senior story circle. People came to tell tales from their youth, love stories, war stories, tales of heartbreak and forgiveness. When it was my turn, I stood at the front of the room and looked around. I used to think silence was grace, I said. That biting my tongue meant I was mature. That enduring quietly meant I was strong. But silence isn't always noble. Sometimes it's just survival. There were a few nods. I continued. It took being called senile by my own daughter to realize, if you don't write your own story, someone else will write it for you. And they'll write you right out of it. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And another. I wasn't telling my story out of spite. I was telling it because I'd earned it. A few days later, Rachel called again. I got your letter, she said. There was no anger in her voice. Just honesty. I didn't know you felt all that. Yes, you did, I said gently. You just didn't want to admit it. She didn't argue. I don't know how to fix everything. Start by not pretending nothing happened. She sighed. There was a pause. Then I've been going to therapy. That surprised me. Good, I said. And I told Grace what we did. Not all the legal stuff, but I told her we made a big mistake. That surprised me even more. What did she say? She said she knew already. Kids always do. That time, it was my turn to sigh. She loves you, Mom, Rachel added. She just doesn't trust me not to hurt you again. She's smart, I replied. Another pause. Can we all have dinner together next weekend? No agenda. Just dinner. I didn't answer right away, but then I said, yes. One dinner, the following weekend. We met at a quiet little Italian place near the river. Grace ran into my arms as soon as she saw me. Tom gave a polite nod and stayed mostly quiet. Rachel looked nervous, but she let Grace sit beside me. She didn't interrupt her stories, and when I offered to split the check, she didn't argue or act insulted. She simply let me. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was the first time I didn't feel like I was in the room as an accessory. I felt like a person again, a mother, a grandmother, A woman with a voice. Later that night, back at home, I lit another candle for Mark. Small steps, I whispered, but I'm not going backward. The next morning I walked past the mirror in the hallway and stopped. There was something different in my reflection now, not younger, not softer, but firm, rooted. A woman who had finally spoken up for herself and hadn't been destroyed by the aftermath. They had called me senile to shut me up. But in the end, it wasn't their voices that mattered, it was mine. And now everyone could hear it. It started with a manila envelope shoved into my mailbox. No postage. No name on the return address. Inside was a printed notice, signed by an attorney I didn't know, representing someone I knew all too well. Rachel. It was a formal court petition, requesting a hearing to reassess the mental fitness of Margaret Hartley, me. She'd gone through with it, after all the talks, after the letter. After that quiet dinner we shared last week, she went behind my back again. And this time she was trying to put me on legal record as incapable. I sat down in the kitchen with the envelope and a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking. Not because I wasn't shocked, but because I'd been prepared for this exact betrayal the moment I rewrote the trust. It was the very reason Carolyn had included the no coercion and fitness clause in the document. She said people always look calm when they don't think they'll ever be questioned until the paperwork hits. I called Carolyn the next morning. She really filed it? I asked. She did, she confirmed, but what she doesn't realize is that she just walked into the worst possible courtroom. The one where facts and intent collide. Will I need to testify? Maybe, Carolyn said. But if you do, we'll be ready. The first hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Rachel's claim was that I had shown erratic judgment and was under undue influence, possibly by someone at the community center. She named no names. She cited no examples, just vague statements about me seeming confused and not the mother she used to know. It was cowardly. It was also weak, but it was still real, and it had to be answered properly. On the day of the hearing, I wore my blue blazer, the one Mark always said made me look sharp. I pinned my pearl brooch at the collar and sat straight-backed beside Carol. Across the room, Rachel sat beside a younger man in a wrinkled suit and sneakers. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Grace wasn't there. Thank God. The judge was a tall black woman, in her 50s, with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense tone. Hartley, it says here your daughter is requesting a medical review to determine if you are capable of handling your own estate and finances, she said, scanning the file. Yes, Your Honor, I replied, and I find it ironic considering my daughter had no problem accessing my finances without my knowledge, just months ago. A low rustle filled the courtroom. Carolyn stood. Your Honor, if I may, we've prepared a full exhibit binder that includes evidence of Hartley's cognitive assessments, her notarized documents, and transcripts from a recent psychological evaluation taken voluntarily. The judge nodded. Submit it. The bailiff handed over the binder. Rachel's lawyer stood up and tried to spin things. Your Honor, my client acted out of concern. She believed her mother was being manipulated. By whom? The judge asked. There was a pause, then a vague mumble. We don't have the exact name, but someone at her senior group. The judge raised a hand. So this is based on hearsay and assumption. The lawyer fumbled. Then came my turn. Carolyn asked. Ms. Hartley, are you under anyone's care at this time? No. I live alone, drive myself, cook, clean and volunteer 4 days a week. Have you been diagnosed with any cognitive disorders? No, ma'am. What made you restructure your estate plan? I looked directly at the judge. Because my daughter accessed my bank accounts without my consent, skipped my birthday and then accused me of losing my mind when I confronted her. That isn't concern. That's control. The judge didn't blink, but I saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition. After that, Carolyn submitted a printed bank statement highlighting the unusual activity that had occurred in the months before the trust change. She also submitted a signed letter from Grace's school counselor, who'd witnessed Rachel saying things like, "My mom's losing it," in front of her daughter. Rachel's lawyer objected. "Overruled," the judge said. When it was over, we stepped outside to wait for the judge's written decision. Rachel finally looked at me. For a moment, I thought I saw something like shame in her eyes. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said softly. I held her gaze. "No, Rachel, you just didn't think I'd stand up." 2 weeks later, the court ruled in my favor. The judge stated there was no credible evidence of impairment, and that I had acted within full rights to protect my estate from unauthorized interference. Rachel's petition was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could never file it again. I framed that document, hung it right by the front door, not out of spite, out of remembrance. So I'd never forget that the person you raise can become a stranger, but that doesn't mean you have to lose yourself. Carolyn called that evening. "You held your own in there," she said. "Honestly, better than most of my younger clients." "I've had decades of practice keeping quiet," I said, "but now I know better." "Have you thought about taking further legal action?" I paused. "I've thought about it," I said, "but honestly, winning was enough." That night, Grace texted me. "Mom seems different, quiet. She's been crying a lot." I told her what she did was wrong. She didn't argue. I wrote back, "Telling the truth is never wrong, but give her time. She's still learning what consequences feel like." The next weekend, I went to the garden center and bought a new rose bush, something I'd been putting off for a year. I planted it near the back fence by the wind chimes Mark gave me. When the wind picked up and made them sing, I smiled, not because it was over, but because I'd made it through without losing who I was. They tried to drag me into court. They thought I'd fall apart under the pressure, but they forgot one thing. I didn't come alone. I came with receipts, and I came with the truth. I once heard someone say gratitude shouldn't come with a leash. At the time, I didn't fully understand it, but now, I knew exactly what it meant. For years, I had been told to be grateful. Grateful that Rachel visited on holiday. Grateful that Tom helped with my finances, even though it was my name on the account. Grateful that they let me live in my own home. Grateful that they didn't put me somewhere. That was the unspoken threat, always hanging in the background, that if I didn't smile and nod, I'd be alone, or worse, discarded. But now I had silence and freedom, and not once did it feel lonely. After the court ruled in my favor, Rachel didn't call for 2 weeks. No texts, no email, no surprise visits. For the first time in over a year, I woke up each morning without tension in my shoulders. The house felt lighter, the air easier to breathe. I filled my days with little rituals. Morning walks, crossword puzzles, calls with Grace, coffee with my neighbor Lorraine. I was rediscovering how to live on my own terms, and I liked it. Then came the invitation, a cream-colored envelope in a shiny gold-trimmed sleeve, Rachel's handwriting on the front, Grace's sweet little curls doodled on the back. Inside, a hand-drawn card. Grace had made it. A heart. A smiley face. A stick figure of me, holding a flower. Beneath it, "I miss you, Grandma." Tucked in with the card was a letter. This one, from Rachel. "Mom, I'm sorry. Again, but this time, I mean it without trying to fix anything. Without trying to get anything back. You were right. I was trying to control what I didn't understand. And I hurt you in the process. Grace wants to see you. I want to see you too. But only if you're ready. We're hosting a small dinner next weekend. Just us. No Tom. Just Grace and me. No agenda. No guilt. Just dinner. Love, Rachel." I read it twice. Then once more. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I called Grace. She picked up after 2 rings, breathless with excitement. "Are you coming? I made your favorite peach cobbler. Mom let me bake it mostly myself this time. I smiled. I might come. Please come. It's not the same without you. It's never the same. That was all I needed to hear. The next Saturday, I put on a navy sweater and pearl earrings and drove across town. When I arrived, the house was quieter than usual. No blaring TV, no Tom's voice echoing from the garage, just the smell of baked chicken and peaches. And Grace standing on the porch, grinning. She ran into my arms before I could even get to the steps. I missed you, she whispered into my sweater. I missed you more. Inside, the table was set for three. Just three. No hidden chairs. No fourth plate in the corner. Rachel looked nervous, but different. Softer. Smaller. And maybe finally honest. Dinner was simple and for once, not tense. We talked about Grace's school project, a lizard named Max in her science class, and how she wanted to be a lawyer now, because Grandma has the smartest one. Rachel laughed at that. So did I. When it was time for dessert, Grace went to the kitchen. Rachel stayed behind. She didn't speak for a moment, just stared at her plate. Then, quietly, I really messed up. I sipped my tea. She continued, I tried to make you into someone helpless, someone I could manage. I told myself it was to protect you, but it wasn't. It was to protect myself. That felt true. She looked up. I'm not asking for your trust back, because I know I haven't earned it, but I do hope I can someday. I looked her in the eye. You don't get trust with apologies, Rachel. You get it with time. And choices. She nodded. Then I'll keep showing up, if you'll let me. I said nothing. But when Grace returned and plopped the cobbler onto the table with whipped cream on her nose, I smiled and passed her a spoon. That was enough of an answer. A few weeks later, the community center hosted a legacy storytelling night. They invited seniors to come share their life stories. Not just the pretty parts, but the real ones. They asked me to speak. At first, I said no. Then I realized I had a story worth telling. That night, I stood in front of 30 folding chairs and said, I spent most of my life being quiet, being accommodating. I thought that made me strong, but strength without boundaries isn't strength. It's martyrdom. A woman in the front row gasped a little. I went on. I raised a daughter who once called me Senile to take my power away. I almost believed her, until I remembered who I really was. A few people murmured. I didn't get angry. I got smart. I spoke up. I called a lawyer, and I fought for my name, my home, and my mind. A man clapped first, then a woman, then the room. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, and I was finally free to tell it. Rachel and I are not what we once were. We may never be, but I see effort now. I see humility. She brings Grace over once a week. They never stay long, but they come. Grace always hugs me tight and says, still proud of you, Grandma. That's more than enough. As for Tom, I haven't seen him in months. That silence suits me just fine. My birthday came around again. This time they remembered. Grace made me a scrapbook. Rachel baked the cake, and there were flowers on every table. No more fake smiles, no more empty promises, just presents and peace. They told me I should be grateful, but gratitude shouldn't come with a lock. So I found the key. I took back my voice, and I used it. Not to scream, but to speak the truth, quietly, powerfully, and finally, permanently.